Edwin Torres is a poet and performer born in New York City, author of several poetry collections, including this one. Uh, Ameroscopia is the most recent one, which of course is on my shelf. And, you know, I can't read from the page because I've known you since the 90s and I watched you at the New York Poets Cafe. You invited me to collaborate with you at one time in Poets Neurotica. You're you're an amazing performer,
Thank you.
and you're also a published writer, and you're also bilingual, and you make up a lot of words,
Right.
which I love. And you're giving a workshop, a virtual workshop on Saturday, June 3rd from 12 to 3.
Right. Right.
And how would you describe yourself, Edwin?
Well, let's see. Thank you for having me, Martha. We've known each other for such a long time. It's a really, it's a blessing to have that lineage and to have that connection. As you know, it's
It
always
is.
important. It's important to kind of know not just where you're from, but where you've been, and that all the connections kind of lead you to where you are now. I mean, that's a very generic statement, but it's just like the sense of not just friendship, but also just that real rootedness into one's, upbringing and what's really established my voice as an artist. I mean, I remember the times that we performed at thread waxing space,
Yes.
a space that you coordinated on Broadway downtown
Sunday
before,
afternoon
y-
stories.
yeah,
Yeah,
before the rents were insane, and it was a beautiful, it was such a great gathering, and
it really
anyway,
was. And your now wife, Liz, used to do the door there for me.
yes,
And she was
yeah,
like so dependable for that and
yes,
so
yes.
great
Elizabeth, yeah.
just being
But
there.
I want to just correct. I actually have. Let me see. There's this book which is came after Ameriscopia,
Oh, I'm
the thread
sorry.
text, and then the most current one is actually this one. Oh, my blurry background.
Quanundrum.
Quanundrum. Yes. So
Right.
yeah,
I apologize. I think that's on my shelf somewhere too.
I thought so. I thought you had that. Yeah.
I did. And so I'm just getting old. I'm sorry.
That's okay. But the Quanundrum actually won the American Book Award last year, so I'm very proud of it.
I didn't
Uh,
even know that.
Yeah,
Congratulations,
yeah, I came
Edwin.
out from Roof Books. And it's great to kind of have that jump. I mean, yeah, you remember Steve Cannon
Of
way back.
course.
And Steve Cannon was such a mentor to so many poets. And when I was getting into spoken word, um, Steve would have these fabulous stoop workshops in his home where he would
Hmm.
sort of like teach the young folk who are doing stuff on stage that it belongs on the page first. So I, I really
Okay.
I really try to make sure that the poem is working on as text. And then,
Interesting, because I wanted to talk to you. I was playing before bringing you on Viva la Viva.
oh, yes,
And then I noticed that you have that in Ameriscopia.
right, right.
So go ahead and talk about that a little, how you get from the page to the stage.
Well, that poem, Viva la Viva, is actually began the first line of a friend of mine was going through a divorce. So it's like, okay, and I said, okay, well, I want to write. It was very affecting to me because his whole life was changing. So he used to be the picture of a family man was the first line for me. So Viva la Viva came from a series of rhyming couplets that were trying to explore one's sense of self through change, through transformation, basically. I know poetry is a great vehicle to kind of instigate change through what language can do. So, poem, I knew rhyme and repetition would be sort of like a mantra of sorts to kind of explore what transformation can do. So, Viva la Viva, the phrase Viva la Viva is kind of like an intermingled sense of like, Che Guevara and just seeing some graffiti in a Paris wall and just kind of like say, okay, that would work as a refrain in the middle of all these couplets. So that
Mm.
poem took a long time to construct actually because it's so simple, but the simplicity needs a lot of work.
Yes, to make sure that what's there is expressing.
That it's expressing it and also that the simple form of the rhyme covers quite a lot of territory. So the poem itself, transforms into this kind of like a dark ending, but it's also just like life goes on in a way. Do you
Uh-huh.
want to play that or
I was playing it before you
oh,
came on, so our
so
listeners have heard Viva la Viva,
oh,
and
great, great.
that's
Well,
why I
and
wanted to play that.
the recording itself, Matt Harrell, the musician that worked with me on that, just came up with this really beautiful. It's sort of like DIY electronics. It's not like really fancy. It's kind of old MIDI synthesizer stuff
Uh-huh.
that just worked with the poem in some kind of way, and he knew where to pull out, where to let empty spaces allow the words to kind of like have fuller meaning, and when to kind of come in and be a little more chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
So working with Matt has been really beautiful. Our band is called Sound House,
Uh-huh.
but it's basically just me and him. But that project was a
And
few
do you
years.
go out and perform with him?
We did. We haven't been Sound House for a while, which is fine. Everything has its own transformation.
Right.
But I try to keep active recording wise to kind of like have the poem have another life in the recording studio. So I'm working with other musicians, including the one that you played last week, Unkadi Ran Verse dans l'herbe, which is a
Oh,
mouthful.
thank you for saying that.
which translates into shopping carts thrown into the grass. So
That's
that
some name.
it's crazy. So he came up with that. But anyway, I've known him, Didac, for many years. He's from Barcelona,
Uh-huh.
and he also creates kind of digitally based electronic music. So I like kind of like putting language into this other form besides the text, besides stage and so forth. So the poem has many lives beyond the written form.
Now, do you intend to what do you intend to bring to this virtual
Oh,
workshop? Is this going to be sort of a combination of these things, or
the workshop is geared more around the body's place in the poem. I see the edge of the poem almost as a poet's spine, like that's a metaphorical sense of a visual representation. But like, how does the poet allow themselves to exist in their poem? And
okay?
that's
Now, I
really,
want to stop you for a moment
yeah,
because I'm having all these memories of seeing you perform, and how much of it is body, like
right.
no spoken word at all, but just watching you. And I remember seeing you like with multiple tape recorders that you were turning on and off. You do moves like a dancer, I would
Uh,
say. You're very sort of conscious of how you're using your body, almost like, well, I don't want to say it's comedic, but I think of like physical comedians with some of the things that you've done. So you really kind of, you don't hesitate to draw on different mediums and forms of expressing yourself.
Absolutely.
Tell me how that all relates to your poetry and spoken word.
That's really a great question. To me, it's spatial dynamics, like working on the stage, and how our proximity is to the audience, and what they're picking up on, not just the words, but what they're seeing. I'm interested in how the poem can translate its meaning in many ways. What I was saying before about the poem sort of levitating off the page. Um, I would work on the stage and be conscious of the fact that I'm physically stopping reading, and I bend down, I pick up the tape recorder, I move it over here. So now I'm a worker. Now I'm a stagehand. And now I'm the poet. So I like that blurring of distinction. I think that creates a certain loss of hierarchy in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no longer like, oh, we're at a church gathering and we just must pay attention. It's more just that we are all involved in the creating of the moment together. So it's a very communal sort of sense. The movements just kind of came naturally. I was doing them for a while, and I realized, well, not every poem should need to have a lot of movement to it, but
Mm-hmm.
I should allow myself that freedom to
To
express
move.
myself in a
Sure.
way.
Okay. That
So that's
makes
part,
sense. And
yeah,
I can
that's
tell people that it's very entertaining to watch Edwin. It's not just well, I don't want to say just another poet because I love to see poets just stand and read their poetry, but
Oh, absolutely.
this is a different type of expression. And I want to get a little deeper into that because another thing that I think about with you specifically is language. You're bilingual, and I think I've always heard you speak in Spanish and English, some kind of Spanglish, but you've gone way beyond what people would call Spanglish. You have like, I don't know what you do when you proofread your books because it must be a challenge because probably like all the software just says everything misspelled because I've run into that a little myself, but
Right.
I can imagine with you that it's explosive. So maybe you could talk a little bit about just your concept of language and what gives you that freedom to make up words.
I think just that, and that's what I sort of teach in workshops, not just this workshop coming up, but in general. I've taught it in Europa and other places, and it's important for me to tell the students that the world is basically their poem, and that they can use it all in different ways. So what part of that is this like lack of hierarchy, like I mentioned. So um, I allow myself that sense of like when a word, an English word doesn't have the meaning that I want, I'm allowing myself to kind of invent something. But you can't just do that sort of like haphazardly. Otherwise, it becomes a joke. It becomes like, oh, he's just making up words. There's a place to kind of have them work for me rhythmically, to have them sort of like allow the current or the movement of the poem, its sort of origin or its location. That's very out there. But the idea is that I guess growing up also in a hybrid culture with Spanish and English, anybody that's grown up in a hybrid culture sort of develops an ear for the space between the languages, the space
Mm-hmm.
between, in my case, English and Spanish, but also that space that sort of finds meaning in poetry. I feel poetry has a lot of spacing in between, a lot of like undercurrent of, on the form, on the page, between stanza, between words. All of that is between space. And to cultivate that between space sort of opens up your ears to what you can say, to your truth, to what you're trying to accomplish. Whether it's a simple story about your son or a complicated story that's more of an epic, like the sense of like finding out what it is that you're trying to get at is a worthwhile journey. And also, I don't really want to find out where I'm going because if I find out, I have nowhere to go. So
Uh-huh.
it's a continuous question. It's a continuous landing. It's a continuous arrival. So it's always a metaphor. It's always changing. It's transformational in that way. So I just went
Interesting.
off all over there, but I hope that.
Oh no, this is where we wanted to go, all over the place, right? To
Mhm.
really listen and hopefully be heard. I wonder when you speak about meaning and understanding, I don't think there's a literal meaning or understanding that you're expecting people, maybe expecting is the wrong word, but um, how would you like people to approach listening or watching
It's
Edwin Torres?
well. Also, I love the name of listening and be heard. That's such the crux of poetry, the crux of communication. I don't have one expectation. I want the chance of possibility. Where can we go here? I feel that the poet writes something, and at that moment, that's what the poem means to them. Hopefully, the poem is open enough where you can come back to it later on, and there are other openings that present themselves. So I'm interested in sort of presenting openings, presenting portals in between words or at the end, whatever. I want the audience to feel that, the reader to feel that they're being listened to and they're being talked to at the same time.
So you almost want to feel like you have heard your listener?
Yes,
Is
yes,
that
yes.
too
Even
much of a stretch?
that, no, no, no. I want to feel that and I don't always, and that doesn't always happen. But I feel that I want to have the poem saying, okay, I'm listening to you. if a poem can do that on the page, if a poem
Collaborate
can
with the
collaborate with the
reader.
reader, yeah, which is kind of like how is that physically possible? I don't know, but language lets us create what we don't know.
And that is the power of books, though, right? We get to communicate with people from ages past, and they do
Absolutely.
somehow reach out to us and communicate to us. Now, whether we're talking back to them,
Yeah.
I think we are. It's like a continuum, right?
Our ongoing questioning allows us to find out where we can go, that we're not just here, and that it's important to know that we're not just here, that there's a larger universe behind us, in front of us, and we are a continuum.
Hmm.
So part of that continuum is that you're not alone, and also that you shouldn't be alone, that there are people listening to you, and that you should be communicating to people. I think arts
Absolutely.
can do that. We're in a position. It's really a gift to be this kind of like a conduit between the unknown and the more unknown. There's never there's
The
never unknown.
unknown and the more unknown. So
Yes.
we're listening, Edwin. Do you have something that you would like to share with us today?
Yes. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna read two short pieces. One is actually about what we're just talking about.
Great.
It's
And
brand
is
new.
it from one of your books?
No, no, this is
Okay.
unpublished. This is
Okay.
brand new. Okay. It doesn't have a title even.
Well, exclusive world
Yeah.
premiere then.
I write about not knowing, claiming that not knowing is a space to move in, to not know the next landing spot for gesture, word, outcome, to not understand a world in constant misunderstanding, to not know the how at the why of a people. There's comfort in the following a need for something lesser than, following the lesser than, the I don't know of that outcome. Thinking to claim not knowing gives me freedom, the opposite. I am not writing about that outcome, that landscape. The knowing of that is what guides. The knowing guides. It is the knowing inside the getting that gives me landing. To claim landing as a terrain is opposite. To claim the about to be is where I am most myself. The not known there, the about to be, what I know.
Oh, so perfectly appropriate to our
Yes.
spontaneous conversation. I love it. You
And
said you
then,
had one more.
yeah. Okay, so this is from Quanundrum.
Okay.
Okay.
And who published Quanundrum?
Roof Books.
Roof Books, that's right.
Roof,
Okay.
yes.
And
Yeah.
it's available like everywhere.
Yeah. I saw it on Amazon or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is called The Interrupted Blanket. The effort to remain ambiguous while your heart is beating, broken heart as shadow play. I stand on the calculated cliff, inner rinsing against telestration, adhesion of a sun cloud. Jagged reminders, trying to look past deeply torn tensions. Just say it. Are you fitting in or not? Say, oh, and make a good void. Oh. How did that feel? What creates your properly responsive emptiness? Where does my blinking mechanism ride me? Did you know bees sleep in flowers holding each other's feet? And the unsleeping puzzle dreams of its missing piece. The world outside these walls is intent on making me face it. Am I to give in? Or is that giving in one kind of freedom looking to fit in?